So after your first shoot at the Parikrama concert, you must have found a few technical challenges that you needed to
So my
overcome.
technical challenges, I think,
What were those like?
most concerts happen in the evening at night, or outdoor concerts, or even if it's at a bar, for example, it's very low light, and most of you have people jumping around and all of that. So trying to figure out how to freeze motion, for example, how to shoot in low light. Uh, you can't use flash, you can't use any external source of light. So those were really challenging, right? To get usable images, most shows that happen, like I said, whether it's in bars or clubs or wherever it is in the evening and at night, and that was a big challenge. I think that I think by far was my biggest challenge. How to figure out how to shoot in low light without any external light. To figure out how to shoot people who are jumping around, all kinds of stuff. So those were my biggest challenges.
And was there any chance for you to learn from someone?
I wrote to a few people. I don't even think they wrote back. I wrote to a couple of others. They said no. So there was really no opportunity. I didn't know anybody who was. I think there was one person in Chennai who was shooting some concerts, but I didn't know anybody else who was doing concert photography. I had a couple of friends. I picked their brains occasionally. But no, most of it is just learned on the job. Most of it is learned on the internet. That's pretty much how I've kind of learned and found my way around this.
And let me just ask you something as an aside from this.
Sure.
Now, you've been shooting concerts for about 6 or 7 years, right? So in the early days, I assume you would have been concentrating a lot more on making sure your shot was just right, because you were still gaining experience on shooting in challenging conditions. But now that you've spent some time there and you must be completely familiar with all your equipment and the really crazy conditions that we'll talk about later on, can you still enjoy the concert as an attendee while you're shooting?
Yes, I still do. There are times, in fact, that I've gotten carried away. I'm singing with the band, and then I kind of lose sight of the fact that I've got a job to do, and we have very little time. So yeah, so what I do now is I go out there. I know what kind of pictures I need to get. I research the band a fair bit before I go and shoot them. I watch, whether it's YouTube videos, I watch other photographers, what kind of pictures other photographers have taken. Just get to understand the band a bit more. So I go in there, I finish. We are given mostly only, 1 or 2 songs. And if we're really lucky, we're given 3 songs. So I finish that. And then if we are not escorted out of the venue, then I get to, sit around, enjoy the concert after. But, I still do. Yeah. Like I said earlier, it's the environment that I'm in that I really enjoy. Being amidst all that chaos and madness and the pyrotechnics and all of that, that is something I really enjoy. So it's the experience for sure.
So Vikram, early on in the show, you talked about all the various work that you do, and now we've also walked through your journey into concert photography. But most people, I don't think, even know what really happens at a concert or what happens backstage and what are the conditions that you're shooting in, because from what you have told me, it sounds pretty treacherous. Why don't you just expand a little bit on what you actually go through on a concert shoot? So
I think depending on where you're looking at it from, it can be quite treacherous. So yeah. Like I said earlier, right? We are typically given, when you shoot a concert, so whether it's a festival, unless you're with the band, and I've been with a couple of bands, in that case, you sometimes get to shoot their whole set. Otherwise, it's 3 songs. You have a small area called the photo pit. So there is the crowd, there is the barricade, then there are all the security in front of the barricade. On this side, there's the stage. There's speakers, there's pyrotechnics. So you're basically between the security guys and the stage. And at any given point, so, if you take a big festival abroad, there's about there's about 350 photographers from around the world, right? And each of us might get one song, right? So we're sent into that pit in batches of 60 or 70 people, and we're all basically jostling for space. Again, you have no control over the lighting. You have no control. I mean, you pretty much have no control. I've had instances where there are, people who crowd surf and then pretty much get thrown over the security guys. People will land on you sometimes. Then there's all the fire and the pyrotechnics going off, and you get like 60 seconds to make a shot. There's also the weather. A lot of the time in like where I shoot in Germany, it rains a lot. So there's all of that you have to deal with. And then a lot of these festivals have 7 or 8 different stages. And, if you're shooting for a publication, typically you'll need to do so many big bands, you'll need to do so many small bands. So it involves going from stage to stage, 2 cameras in hand, trying to shoot as much as you can. And then, you have to go to the media tent, upload a lot of those images, because a lot of these guys want to put out these images first. There's the kind of, mad rush to put out images first. So there's the weather, there's the fact that you can't, again, lighting is something you have absolutely no control over. I've shot shows where it's just complete darkness, right? You can't get pictures. Or there are shows where the band stands so far back, they just don't want to come up in front of the stage because they know there are all these photographers. Some of them are not very photographer friendly. So there's all of this chaos. I mean, that, apart from, what happens before, you even get there, which is getting your visa, going all the way from India to a lot of these places are really far-flung, involve multiple connections, typically bus, train. There's all of that. We end up shooting, a lot of these festivals are, 16, 17 hour a day shoots. There's not much, you have to wade through the crowd and go to get food and stuff like that. So that is another problem. The other big challenge is, being from here, I'm not used to an outdoor life, as it were. I don't camp. I had never camped till, 4 years ago. And, in places like France, where I was, I spent 4 nights actually in a plastic box, a cardboard box. So, there wasn't enough room. I couldn't obviously get up. So I would lie down and basically crawl back out of that box. And I had 2 chairs outside, and I had my suitcase with a change of clothes and stuff on the chairs outside, and I would cover it because it would get damp at night. And then I would walk to this public bathroom and sometimes shower and sometimes not shower. So I spent 4 nights in a plastic box, in a cardboard box in a festival in France. In Germany, I camped out in someone's garden. So that was quite a funny story. So I camped out in this person's garden. We went out, we shot, came back like really late in the night. It must have been like 2 in the morning. It was raining and stuff like that. And I had set up my tent. I was going to go into my tent, and good sense prevailed, and I said, let me use my flashlight and just look inside the tent before I go. And I opened the tent, and I turned on my flashlight. I saw the biggest hedgehog I had ever seen.
Oh my God.
On my sleeping bag. And I was like, shit, I can't, there's just no way, right? So then I called one of the other guys, and they've obviously been doing this a long time, right? He just went in, he picked up the hedgehog, walked away with it, and he went and I think he put it on the other side of the compound wall. He said, well, you can go in and sleep now. You'll be all right. I'm like, that was like totally crazy, right? So I never, so things like that. And then you can't sleep after that. You're always thinking like, something's going to come into my tent. So so there's all of these things, and then the food itself, right? So most of the times these festivals, I just end up eating like a hot dog, right? I'll have 1 or 2 hot dogs for the whole day. Getting water sometimes is a problem because most of them drink beer. I don't drink when I'm shooting. So getting water is a problem. So I remember a festival in Germany again one time where I luckily met this Indian gentleman who was running this food stall. And he was kind enough to give me a big bottle of water, which it was like liquid gold.
The things you need to stock upon and carry along with cameras is a water bottle.
Yeah, water bottle. I try and carry 2 water bottles actually, because getting water is hard.
And you must wish that you'd be able to get your camera out of that melee of photographers pointing their cameras at the stage.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's also this this fear that your equipment will get damaged, right? I've had people. I think it was in England where somebody jumped over the barricade and basically decided he didn't like me for whatever reason. So I think he jumped the barricade and he shoved me. So I ended up falling on a bunch of photographers, equipment everywhere. All
God.
of that. I've had again people just jumping in slush and mud, and I'm kind of completely soaked in all of this crap, and then I have to sit and worry about my equipment. So there's
So how do you actually? How is there any way that you are able to get a shot that's different from the other photographers that are in the same group with you, in the same pit with you?
So again, something I've learned from experience, right, is how well do you know the band? So typically there are certain musicians that have what they call signature moves. It could involve jumping off a speaker. It could involve, a certain way they played the guitar. It could involve something they did. So a lot of the time it's about how well do you know the band, and it's anticipating that moment when and the more you shoot, the more you listen to that music, you kind of know what to expect and what to anticipate. So there are times I've set myself up for that. I've gone out with the intention of shooting that one particular musician in one band, and there's just that one thing that he does that I want, right? And many times I've ended up getting that shot, and for some reason, it ends up being different many times from what other people, because in a small pit there are only 1 or 2 vantage points you can get if you want a particular musician. And sometimes musicians, if they are stage left, not all the time do they go stage right. So if you know that is the moment that will define the band, or if there's fireworks in the beginning of the song, whatever it is. So there are times that I've actually not gone into the pit. I've gone, I've been in the crowd and shot from the crowd because I know there is this one moment that I want.
Yeah, so it also helps to plan based on each band that you shoot.
No, absolutely. A lot of research, a lot of planning, a lot of watching YouTube, a lot of looking at other musicians, other photographers who have shot this band, a lot of that. So that's again something that I do. I write to other photographers. If it's a new band, for example, and I like a particular shot, I try and find out if they actually jumped a certain way in the first 3 songs, if they did something, and is that how that photographer captured the moment, and just kind of make a note of it. So, if I ever run into the band, I know what to expect. So those are small things that I do.
Well, with a lot of the venues that you end up shooting are in different countries. So when you shoot in India, you know the language and generally know the culture. And when you shoot in the US or in England, that's a bit more similar. You have more exposure. What about how are your language skills, especially when you shoot in places like France and Germany?
Terrible. I don't speak the language, so I use Google Translate.
And that works well?
Yeah. You have to make it work, right? So a couple of funny things happened. I was in Paris, and I was trying to get to my venue, and so in the city, I bought a train ticket, and for some reason that ticket didn't swipe at the first turnstile at the station that I got in at. The ticket didn't swipe, but the guard, he let me through. He used his pass, and I think he let me through. Anyway, I think it was Gare du Nord. I got to the big station where I had to take a connection on to this small town called Clisson where I was shooting, and so there are all these turnstiles, and my ticket wouldn't swipe. So I waited 5 minutes. I tried to swipe my ticket. There was absolutely no officer, no one inside. I mean, there was just people, but there was no official. So and I had all of this equipment, and I'm like, I tried to swipe I spent about 5 minutes trying. I tried various turnstiles, didn't work. I was there for 55 minutes, and I would have missed my train. And I didn't know what to do. And again, I couldn't speak the language, and they thought I was just trying to panhandle, maybe brown guy in a station walking up with a ticket. And, I tried to tell people that it's not working. And then I went to a store and I said police, and they didn't understand police. And then I tried to do my Google Translate thing, which is basically say police in English, and Google will, tell me the French version of it. And I would ask them, and they didn't want to hold up my phone and listen to it as well, right? So I spent 55 minutes until I think he was Jamaican. He said, okay, I'll use my pass and let you through. So, but I almost missed my train. I was outside a venue in Paris when I was going to shoot the Scorpions, and I was looking for gate 35. There was gate 33 and there was gate 36, I think, or 34 and 36. There was no 35. So I went around the venue, I think multiple times. I would have spent an hour going around the venue asking for gate 35. They just didn't know. I was trying to say 35 in English, and they didn't know until one guard finally, okay, he's like Google Translate. He agreed to listen to my phone, and, it said 35 in French. And I managed to kind of get in. I found the gate and I got it. So language is a big problem for me, especially in Europe.
And do you enjoy the amount of travel that you have to go through, and, being alone for so much of the time?
There are times when it gets a little tiring, but, I really try. I work hard on my fitness. I try to keep myself physically fit. That helps. That really helps. But, there are times that it gets really hard. Just being on the road, or, making all of these connections, traveling 20 hours. I mean, this is excluding the travel from India, right? And for us, the stress starts even before. Last year, I was again shooting for a very big band. And my visa got rejected 4 days before I had to leave for France, or maybe a week before I had to leave for the UK. So I had to reapply, and I got my visa, I think, 2 days before I left. So all of that, that whole leading up to it can be quite stressful, but I've learned to cope. I've learned over the years, and I think also I count my blessings. I'm quite fortunate to do what I do. I had a moment in Germany, when it was raining. It just rains. It's, absolutely doesn't relent. And I was really, really tired, and wondering why I was doing what I was doing and just putting myself through this physical hardship. But I turned around. I looked at. I think there was about 3-4 lakh people at that show, and I was one of the few on this side of the barricade. So I was like, yeah, you're quite fortunate to be on this side of the barricades.
Yeah, you're somewhere where very, very few people ever get to go.
Yes, absolutely. And I think